Most business owners are paying more attention to their top line growth, to selling more food, selling more cars, selling more widgets, and negotiating rates according to those, negotiating quality, but tend to not focus so much on their indirect expenses, on how much their utilities cost, on how much they're spending on their waste or their shipping.
Do you have a niche that is maybe more difficult to find clients for? Well, we always face that problem when we have kind of a niche in a way. And that's why I have on today Larry Levine. Larry is the owner of P3 Cost Analysts, where he helps CFOs, COOs, and business leaders uncover unnecessary overspending in their business to improve their bottom line. So this is kind of a niche, which is going to be an interesting conversation. Today, we're going to learn a bit about Larry's business journey, services, and personal brand strategy he uses to attract new clients into his business. So, Larry, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Wonderful. So, as I mentioned, this is something we've talked about off the podcast where it's like, this is kind of a problem some clients don't even know they have, right? And so it's kind of one of those things you need to somewhat be educated on. And I'm sure a lot of our audience has similar niches where, there's probably an educative process to their sales cycle here. So why don't we start with actually describing like specifically what it is that you do and you help your clients with?
Sure. Again, thank you. So P3 helps businesses reduce their indirect vendor overcharges. And most people are going to say, well, what is an indirect vendor overcharge? In order to answer that question, let's explain what a direct charge is. If you're in a restaurant, if you own a restaurant, your direct charges, your expenses tend to be food, tables, your kitchen, your staff, your marketing. If you're a car manufacturer, your direct expenses is metal, plastics, leather. Your indirect expenses for those categories, for those businesses, are those expenses that support the business. Your telecom, your utilities, your waste, your shipping, your insurance, property tax, and probably 5 or 6 other categories. Not every business has all of those expenses, but most businesses have some of those expenses. And most business owners are paying more attention to their top line growth, to selling more food, selling more cars, selling more widgets, and negotiating rates according to those, negotiating quality, but tend to not focus so much on their indirect expenses, on how much their utilities cost, on how much they're spending on their waste or their shipping. They're concerned, but for the most part, they take the rates and the quotes that are offered to them by the shipping company, by the utility company, by the waste vendor, as the final word. Sometimes they may attempt to negotiate, just round numbers here, from $1,000, take 5% off, and feel good that they got 5% off, and the vendor feels great that they gave only 5% off, because the vendor's costs, the cost level for that waste service pickup, is probably 30-40% lower than you negotiated, and they still have fat margins.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
help
So
them.
this
We
is
help
like,
our clients reduce those expenses down to cost level. I'm sorry, Dave.
no, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting arena because yeah, it's someone unless someone kind of comes in and tells you that this is happening in your business, I think most people are just kind of overlooking it. And a lot of your top line, most expensive part of your P&L is like up your payroll or something. So you're thinking
Sure.
of yeah, and so you're not looking at some of those like lower line items,
And
but
some of
there's
those
like
lower line
tens of
items are
thousands of savings you can have.
it's not only thousands, but relatively easy. And so, I guess my main point is that you should attempt to negotiate and negotiate as much as possible. And some things are not negotiable. If you're in a regulated municipality, energy regulated municipality, you probably can't do much about your electricity costs. If you are in a closed waste market, it's or franchise waste market, you probably can't do too much. But you don't. Most people don't even know they're in a closed market. They call their waste vendor, they call the municipality, say I need a pickup, I need to arrange for pickup, and they arrange for pickup, and that's it. And they take the rates that are offered to them, and that's it. But if you go through those negotiations, whether it's direct or with someone who knows perhaps better, and we could talk about that, those savings are year after year after year. So if you're able to reduce those expenses, call it I don't know, $50,000 a year combined across utilities. If you own a multifamily property or you own a 10 location restaurant group and you're able to reduce by $50,000 a year, that's every year. That's not an effort that you have to repeat year after year. And if you're looking at a possible sale of your business and your earnings multiplier, say 5 times, you just added $250,000 of value to your business by reducing your expenses by $50,000.
Damn. So looks like there's a lot of analysis, auditing, uh, kind of like strategic approach to this. Let's talk about you specifically. How did you get into this field? Because again, it's something that not a lot of people know about, but you're kind of the owner of a business that does this for a living.
How far back do you want me to go? So
Enough that's relevant.
I've been working for some. I've been since college, some 40 something years. In my what I'll call Larry 1.0 phase with my computer science degree, I was working various high tech jobs. Most you might recognize a few of the companies. Lucent, Dell is now the owner of one of the companies, and maybe one or two others. But there's probably been about 8 or 10 companies. As a software engineer, as a product manager, and I kind of outgrew that in the early 2000s. And so many layoffs later, I and some business partners purchased into a home care franchise. I'll call that my start of Larry 2.0. And we ran the business for ourselves. We had the support of our franchisor. We had business partners, and it was fun. But some of our challenges were that in a home care franchise, you get to certain levels where the revenue just stays stable. You bring on a client, and unfortunately, a client dies. And unfortunately, That's the end of our service for most of our clients. So we're putting in so much effort to stabilize or tread water, and that became frustrating. And in the end, not every client thanked us for our service. Well, they were upset, of course, that their parents are dying. They're spending on average $65,000 a year with us for an extension of life, and it's a longer extension, but not necessarily the end they would ultimately want, and that's their parents to live even longer than that. During COVID, we sold the business back to our franchisor. My daughter graduated. We moved out of Massachusetts. She moved out of Massachusetts to DC. I followed her a few months later, and a few months after that, I started Larry 3.0. One of the things that was in mind for me was recurring revenue, working with clients that are ultimately happy, and the parents aren't dying, their business isn't dying. So I found the cost reduction industry and then focused in on P3, which is there are about five major competitors in the cost reduction in the relatively hidden cost reduction industry. Most of our clients didn't even know that we exist, and the model fit me really well, and I'm able to return money to the businesses, and they're happy, and it affects their bottom line, it affects the value of their company, and if for the smaller groups, it affects the owner's equity and their take home and my take home pay. I'm not sure if I answered all the questions there, but it
No, that's it. I
ultimately
mean, and it's kind of interesting too, kind of comparing the kind of retirement home business and this one. This one, you're kind of like helping a company kind of extend the life of
for sure.
their business. So what you said you got into P3 and something kind of drew you to that. Was there something specific that you were just like, this is kind of where I want to sink my teeth next?
So from an industry, I think maybe there's two answers to this. From an industry perspective, I appreciated that it was effective, even though the business has been around for over 30 years in one form or another. It was a merger of two businesses, and when some additional expense categories were added over those years, it's essentially a hidden or nascent industry that most clients are unaware of. Whether or not they think we can help them, which is one of the challenges we face, it's a relatively nascent industry and is a huge opportunity to grow the business, grow my own revenue, help a lot of business, help a lot of clients, and essentially grow the industry. What attracted me to P3 specifically was the franchise model. Some other of our competition have employee models. It's our audit model. We have a decentralized audit model versus some of our competition have a distributed audit model. And I don't want to focus too much on those differences. But we're also a smaller group than some of our competition, which makes for more opportunity for intimate relationships with my peers and the management, and for to affect the direction of the business to some degree. I mean, it's not
Right.
I'm not the franchisor. I can't control their purse strings and which categories to take on, but or to add to the business. But they have an I have a voice and they have an ear, and they do listen. Where some of the others, I could think of two or three others that are larger, and I think I would get lost in the larger. I like being, I don't, the metaphor doesn't fit completely, but I like being a big fish in a small pond rather than a small fish in a big pond, I guess. Is that the correct metaphor?
Hey, Blueprint fam, if you're enjoying today's episode and finding my guest insights valuable, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Personal Brand Blueprint podcast as we drop weekly guest interview episodes just like this one. And on that note, you obviously also see firsthand how powerful being an effective guest, like the one you're watching on this episode right now, can be at attracting qualified, interested leads directly into your sales funnel. But I know what you're thinking. You want to get into guest podcasting, but starting feels confusing and overwhelming. What equipment do you need? And how do you look and sound great? And how do you turn listeners into leads? I know this because so many of my guests had these exact problems in the past. And that is why I created the Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint. It's a simple but powerful breakdown on everything you need to look, sound, and convert great as a podcast guest. Everything from how to set up your recording area to what equipment you need to look and sound great on camera, and what to say on podcasts to stand out, be memorable, and earn the audience's trust. And then that one key strategy to turn listeners into leads. I'm telling you, this isn't just another checklist. This is a step by step blueprint to make sure you look, sound, and present your best on podcasts so you can convert that attention into leads and ultimately new business. I honestly was thinking about selling this for like $97, but I'd rather give access to this guide to my Personal Brand Blueprint podcast audience for free. So if you are ready to become a sought after podcast guest and use it to generate leads and build your personal brand, and grab your copy of Podcast Guest Mastery Blueprint at davepoly.com/podguest blueprint. You can find the link to that in the show notes below. Again, that's davepoly.com/podguest blueprint and start turning podcast interviews into business. Again, it's completely free for being a loyal listener, so definitely check it out. Cool? All right, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that's what that's used for. So we know a little bit about your history of getting into P3. We told us a little bit about kind of exactly what P3 does, but like let's dive deep into like what's the experience of working with P3? What is it? Because you mentioned you have some competitors as well. How do you guys kind of uniquely approach this cost savings strategies and audits and everything that goes into that? That kind of is more of a differentiator between you and your competitors.
Um, so in general, the way we the way we connect with clients is, it's just called lead generation, whether it's warm lead generation or cold lead generation, email, phone calls, whatever it may be. Certainly the warm leads, the leads that come from existing clients with the implied, if not explicit, credibility that's associated with that, are easier to close. But we'll reach out to kind of, let's back this up a little bit. Who are we reaching out to? We could reach out to any business that has expenses in these categories and can benefit from cost reduction. I'm not answering your question directly just yet. And but who are those businesses? Our statistics demonstrate that 90% of businesses out there can benefit from our services, and as a result of that, essentially any business that is within the, I don't want to give away too much of our secret sauce, but any business that's within a certain revenue spectrum, too small, and there's not enough return on investment for us or for them. Too large is too much bureaucracy. So even though, well, I might be able to target $1 billion company or larger and be very confident we could save them $1 million a year, which sounds like a lot of money. That's 1/10 of 1% of the revenue, and it just is not interesting to them. So there's a sweet spot in the middle that we focus on, and go after them with cold outreach, emails, LinkedIn, texts, phone calls. That changes. our my approach has changed over the 3 years that I'm doing this. There's been a clear recognition of clients, and sometimes I'm reached out to as well, willingness to accept a cold email or a cold phone call. With the advent of, voicemail transcriptions on iPhones, people are not taking phone calls anymore. They're reading the transcripts. So not only do you have to leave a clear message, you have to leave the content, the core content of your message in the first two sentences, or else it scrolls off the screen. So
Mm.
the way we reach out to people changes. With the advent of AI in the last few months alone, there's an opportunity to use those tools. I question today. I'm talking to an AI guy, to yourself. I'm talking to another AI guy next week. I'm questioning the effectiveness of it, because what I think our biggest challenge. Tell me if I've answered your question yet. I think our biggest challenge is not finding the company, not finding the contact, not finding the email address. It's finding those people that are willing to listen, because the part of the reason that the industry is unknown is that most people feel they have their expenses covered, even though they're focusing on top line growth and top line expense management, and haven't spent a lot of time negotiating their waste or the uniforms and linens contracts, whatever. They feel that they've done a good job and don't need to focus on who are you, and we don't believe you. It's a scam. So I don't think I'm concerned that AI is not going to find those people, whether or not AI is going to find those people that are willing to have listen to the conversation any better than I can find
Yeah.
those
So
people.
let's break that down. So I think part of like a hurdle, I guess you're going through that I think maybe a lot of the audience can relate to is like finding your audience who is problem aware, that they have this problem. And many times,
Or
like I said,
willingness to learn that they have a problem, not just aware.
sure,
Learn,
sure,
yes.
yeah. So if you're not aware, and if someone says, "Hey, this actually does exist in your business," they go, "Well, I have too many other problems to worry about right now. Maybe it's not the top of my priority list."
Sure.
And so you kind of have like two education initiatives here. Is one is educating an audience that it is this problem exists within businesses. It probably exists within yours, and that it's an important. It should be pushed up to a higher level on their priority, and that there's a simple solution to be able to solve this problem for them. Um, how is that? What are the kind of the strategies that you've been trying to take to get over those hurdles, if any?
That's great. So you're right on with that. So I'd absolutely love, if you were my lead, I'd absolutely love to be able to talk to you about it and have a conversation. More often than not, you're not picking up the phone, because
Mm.
I and hundreds of others are trying to get your attention. So what I've turned to in the last 6 to 9 months is, like we're doing today, is slightly different focus. I'm trying to guest on some podcasts. I'm taking the opportunity to write and have articles published when necessary. I think I've done 5 or 6 podcasts, one for a real estate group, one for a restaurant Roger Bourdain's Restaurant Rockstars, fairly well known podcast platform. I can't remember the other one right now. I wrote an article for QSR magazine 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks ago from today's recording, that talks about, and my podcast content, my article content has evolved, but it focuses on the opportunity to, so exposes the overcharges that you're probably experiencing, and focuses on the opportunity to negotiate rates. And don't take for granted. Don't accept the first offer for your waste, for your uniforms, linens, for your utilities, for your shipping, whatever your business may have. But at the same time, how how much do you know about how to negotiate with your uniforms and linens vendors? What do you how do you know what is negotiable? Do you know what terms are best negotiated versus others? Do you know what the cost level is for your uniform vendor? You probably don't, and you probably don't have a lot of time to put into that. Are you compensated on a dollar for dollar basis for reducing those rates? And certainly, you'll save that money, but is your finance person, your procurement person, your bookkeeper knowledgeable enough to do that? So
And
in
this
some
is so
cases,
this is content that you're creating And then what's the distribution like? Because I think a lot of people they get confused, or they get kind of their biggest question that I hear from my clients and from people just in the space is just, where should I be? Where should I be posting content?
Sure.
Where should I be focusing my attention? So where are those places that you're focusing your
Well,
attention?
I'm not sure I could answer where we should be. I'll tell you what I've done, and maybe you
Yeah.
could tell me I should be other places. So certainly I'm posting it on my LinkedIn feed. When it gets when they post it, I repost it on my LinkedIn feed. Thank them, put a bunch of hashtags that are relevant to that post. I will also store it in the featured articles, a featured media section of my LinkedIn profile, which is a nice.
Mm.
It's pretty high in the profile. It's above my experience, so it shows. It's not on the first page, but it shows, and so I could point people there. I put it on my landing page, on my corporate landing page, on like this. So for P3 Cost Analysts, every office has a landing page that has a little bio about myself, highlights the clients that we've worked with, and has an articles, podcasts, and media section where I put all those for the future. And I do not do a good job at reposting snippets every week, every month, whatever it may be. It's not that I don't do a good job. I don't do it. I'd love to do it. I love to take time to do it. I don't. But what I do is when I'm outreaching to my clients and my manual sequencing, somewhere in there, after I've done my introduction of who I am and the opportunity, and I'm continuing to try to reach them, I will likely send the restaurant group the restaurant article. And I reach out to multifamily community owners. I will send them the real estate group. It's not a perfect match for them today. I will get a better match in the future. And for the rest, that's the restaurant and restaurant real estate. I missed one in there, but I will send out the content and recycle it that way. What also happens is the more content I push out on my LinkedIn page, not just podcasts, but some other content I create and some other content our franchisor creates for us that we repost. It drives lots of people to me, whether they be manual lead generation teams, AI lead generation teams, podcasters, podcast platform owners, podcast guest agencies, a few of which
Mm.
you may know, and other people selling. So podcast posts generate interest in other podcasters to have me guest. And and they tend to get larger over time. I don't know what the exact audience levels are, but my first podcaster was very unknown. My more recent podcasters have larger audiences, and eventually, I hope that will directly or indirectly generate revenue for the business. It's part of my brand. Obviously, I want to generate revenue today. As of today, it has not, but I know there's been a lot of references to it, a lot of views of it.
Yeah. How do you look at that? Because I mean, content creation, obviously, it's people, a lot of like industry gurus or whatever will preach content creation as kind of the golden ticket or the silver bullet, whatever medal you want to give a metaphor for, that you post content, you get clients. But my big preach is that content just opens doors for conversations to then get clients. It's the first step in two or three other steps that need to take place. But content creation is kind of a compounding effect over time. You're not going to
Mhm.
post one post and see the results. So, what's your relationship with content creation, and kind of how do you approach it in terms of the investment that you've been trying to make with it?
So the content creation, I see two things I want to have happen. I want to be considered as having credibility and knowledge in the cost reduction space. I've posted content for two or three categories. We support 12 expense category. Sorry, two or three ideal client profiles, restaurants and multifamily communities. We support like 10 others. Eventually, they may fill out or may not fill out. So I want to demonstrate credibility to those audiences. And ultimately, I like to generate revenue. I do not expect anybody to see my video and say, hey, where can I sign on? I expect it to maybe have a conversation with them. And maybe I can't help them, but I'd like to have the conversation with them. I've had somebody recently approached me and asked if I would be interested in hosting a podcast, and I was it cost too much money for me today. But what I like, because I would need a high return in order to get back my investment in that. But
Mm.
what the thought process there was not to have a podcast to talk about my cost reduction. And if you listen to my last two three podcasts or read my article, and I'm writing a multifamily article of the same genre, I'm not selling my service. My first podcast that never got published was too commercial. It was for a name brand restaurant platform that people would recognize. They felt it was too commercial. I'm trying to sell myself. I quickly figured that out, pivoted, and it became educational. About to to the viewer. I hope it was educational to help them understand. As I said before, there's opportunities to negotiate. Don't take the first rate that's offered to you. Attempt to negotiate it, but at the same time, you are only going to get so far because you don't have industry insider knowledge and cost level databases, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to generate the conversations and discuss, help people, especially those people that are below our minimum, negotiate on their own. Or
Yeah.
you want to negotiate some things but not other things. Because hopefully I've established credibility with you. You might be able to you might consider working with us at some point in the future, or refer somebody to us that doesn't have the ability that you might have. Or
Sure.
maybe you don't have the need, but you know somebody who does have the need.
Yeah. So it's a lot of building trust. So it could be that they end up being a client of yours potentially if there's a good fit, but at minimum, they at least look at you from your personal brand's perspective and or your business, and at least say stamp of approval. I wouldn't mind referring someone to you at least.
That's 100% true, but you also remind me as you were saying that I on our landing page I have the logos of a few clients. I don't have the a video. I don't have a reference of a text or video recorded reference from any of my clients. But I was recently working with a sales team that I haven't signed on with. He suggested strongly to get if I in addition to building my own credibility, let's get some first-hand credibility from an existing client. So it's a little outside of what we were talking about just now with respect to my own podcasting, but I think there's a lot of value, of course, in asking a few clients that you trust that are willing to, I'm thinking about one in specific right now. He's already referred a very large client to us, a very large business to us. We haven't signed it, but he went out of his way. He said, I'll introduce you to the owner, and he did. But I'm going to ask him at this point for a 30-second handheld selfie testimonial and put it on my website because that's probably even better. He's not going to speak about all of our capabilities for that industry, but he's going to hopefully say he did well. He helped us save money in X, Y, and Z
Yeah.
categories,
Yeah. Yeah. I
and
think
and build my brand that way.
the video
Sorry,
testimonials are huge. I use
sure.
for the audience and for your reference, I use a tool called Senja, SENJA.io. I'll send you a link after
Please,
this, but
thank you.
it makes capturing video testimonials super simple. You create this like testimonial workflow, copy a link, send it to whomever you're trying to get testimonials from, and then it just gives like a mobile friendly experience, and they can
Nice,
record something. It transcribes and then you can embed it easily onto your website, all that kind of
very nice.
stuff.
Okay, maybe I'll do that. Thank you. And I
Um,
think you've probably just pushed me to do it next week. I
there we
will
go.
do it.
That's everyone's homework this week. And so you mentioned you're creating content. It sounded like you had a really good understanding already of like the type of content to create in terms of like educating your ideal client on there is a problem that can exist in your business, and here's what to think about and how to think about it. How are you coming up with the topic ideas on what to write about next?
um, I'm just thinking about as I reach out to so we have 12 ideal client profiles. I focus on 4 or 5 of them, and I think about the conversations I'm having with them or I want to have with them, and eventually it evolves into a podcast. Somebody from that industry reaches out to me and says, would you be willing to guest? Or I write that article. So hopefully at the end of this, we could have put out a link to my QSR Web restaurant article, which is, which is essentially the article version of my last podcast, which is essentially, again, just a conversation, happy conversation about going through. I know you're focusing on your revenue, but you should probably take a little bit of time to focus on your margins because you're probably overspending on 30 or 40% on your margins. And sometimes I'll tell a story like I will right now. My first ever client, after we went through the audit, we discovered he was overpaying on his waste by 76%, well above our average, but it happens. And when we finally put all the numbers together, across his 8 locations, he was overspending by $6,000 a month on waste. And he said to me on the call where we told that to him, he said, "I don't look at my invoices; I just pay them." And I didn't say that to the next part to him on the call, but I say it every time I have this conversation. I say, "Well, what would you be looking for anyway? Do you have the contract? Do you know what's valid in a contract? Contamination charges, fuel surcharges, COVID surcharges, are those valid or not valid? Do you know what the waste vendor's cost level is? What your neighbors are paying? I don't expect you would." And we run into this challenge with many owners, and sometimes let's call it property managers, the person responsible for, say, a multifamily community or commercial real estate, they're responsible for the vendors, or just any other business, financial analysts, they're responsible for the invoices. There sometimes we feel strongly that they are concerned that we will expose their shortcomings. The reality is they've done as good a job as they could possibly do with the information available to them. Because as I said probably 15 minutes ago, they're not an industry insider. They don't know what's negotiable in a contract. They don't have the benchmark cost level. They're not industry. Did I say industry insiders? They're not compensated on a dollar for dollar basis, probably, to reduce those expenses. So they did as good a job as they could. My guy with the 76% $6,000 waste expenses probably did as good a job as he could do because he's not an industry insider. At some point, you have social media needs. You hire a social media agency. You have legal needs. You hire an attorney. You have accounting needs. You hire a bookkeeper. You do have cost. If you're a $50 million business, you probably have cost reduction needs. You probably don't have the skills to do it yourself. Hire a cost reduction agency, and most of them work on a contingency basis, meaning if there are no fees, if there are no findings, there is no fee. And if there are findings, they share in the savings on a different companies, different terms, but if they finance the fee out of savings, so there's no risk, and usually the ROI is pretty high.
Mm.
And that conversation is in my podcast, as it is in my articles, which is how I got here in this conversation.
Yeah, what I love
That's
about
how I
that too,
approach
and
it.
that's something that I preach as well. Is when people, one, if they're weary of being on video in general because they don't know what to say or they don't know if they're going to feel confident on video, is starting with getting conceptualizing your idea through text, whether that be just starting with a social post, just to kind of turn this kind of nugget of an idea into something organized, then kind of expand upon that into more of a long form newsletter or article. So you're really kind of going in depth. And now you kind of have all of the pieces, the puzzle pieces to what is essentially an outline to a potential video, whether it's, something you speak about on a podcast or it's a dedicated YouTube video or something.
Mhm. I actually
You
have a few dedicated YouTube videos that I didn't share with you. I recorded 3 years ago. They're a little clumsy, but it was good. And it's a good thing my first I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's a good thing my first podcast did not publish because it sucked because it was my first. But it's
mhm.
evolved. I hope I could say that.
You can say much worse on this podcast. You're good.
But I think it's part of the evolution. I would not be on my fifth podcast. I wouldn't be talking to you had I not done those. I finally gotten over myself and said,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking. I don't look at myself in the screen here because I don't like seeing myself. I'll turn the. But I got over that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's something the two main things I hear about people who are like weary of getting into just content in general. One is usually, I hate social media. And two is I hate the way I look on YouTube. And I think both of those things usually just stem from a little bit of like imposter syndrome or confidence, lack of confidence
For sure.
in voicing yourself out there. But yeah, as you're kind of attest to, like once you get over that hurdle, um, yeah,
At
it's
my old
positive elements.
company, during the last year or two, it was a home care company. There was and it's during COVID, and there's an evolution to people doing everything with Zoom. We resisted. Me and my business partners resisted Zoom as much as possible because we hated looking at ourselves. We
Hmm.
hated hearing ourselves. But I got over that as, as more and more people just dealt with it. So, deal with it and get over
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Now is video something? Let's kind of look forward in terms of what your strategies are. I can obviously podcasting is an element to that. What are some of the things that you're looking to implement over the next 6, 12 months for your personal brand?
So clearly, again, podcast part of that. As many articles as possible. Most of my articles are being repurposed. Like I said, I wrote the restaurant article, QSR magazine article, and I'm repurposing that for multifamily. I have no commitment to publish it, but I'm confident it'll get published at some point. I'm thinking about outreach to clients with short video form on my via phone. Somebody's doing that to me right now, and it's not super professional, and it doesn't need to be. It's him and his phone in front of him, and he's walking around, whatever. It's a 15-second message. I will probably do it and figure it out and evolve it over the first 10 videos. I don't want it to be corny. I want it to be authentic. I think I might get the attention of a few people who don't get that kind of stuff all that often. And
Now,
at some
is that like a
point,
personalized video or something that you would just kind of
yeah, hey,
send
this is
to?
Larry from P3 Cost Analysts. Just trying to reach you about a cost reduction. Give me a call, or can I send you a link? I mean, 15. That was 10 seconds.
Mhm.
And at some point, I'm going to probably do that next week too. In addition to what was it called,
Senja.
Senja. In addition to Senja, I'll probably do that for somebody next week. Figure it out, and if that takes off, I expect in a year's time that's going to flood the industry as well, and people stop paying attention to that. So there's this evolution. So I
Yeah.
mentioned the voicemail. I have an Android, so I can't benefit from that with the voicemail transcription. I would like to
Mm.
see it. I've experienced my calls going to voicemail and being cut off mid voicemail, which tells me, oh, reading my transcript, reading my reading their transcript as I'm speaking it, which makes me want to change what I'm saying right away.
So we were talking about a lot of what you've been doing to grow your personal brand to attract clients. Let's look to the future a bit, and what are some of the things that you're investing in for the future as it relates to marketing and personal brand growth and client acquisition strategies?
When we think about investing, it's not so much money as it is, getting out of my comfort zone. And one of the things somebody's doing this to me, and it's getting my attention, is as he's reaching out to me with short form video, selfie video. So he's pitching himself. Hey Larry, this is Matt. I'll tell you about X, Y, and Z. Here's my phone number. 10, 15 seconds, he's done. So I will probably do that, test market it a little bit with a few clients as soon as next week and say, hey, this Larry Levine, P3 Cost Analyst, with the phone. Can you see me with the phone in front of me with video, and maybe Serge Senja will help with that as well. I don't know, but reach out with short format video. It's a little different than they're used to getting from me because nobody's getting this from me at the present at all. Um, I think what's happening, this is a response to what's happening in the industry. Cold outreach via email, via phone calls works less effectively today than it did 6 months ago, than it did a year ago, especially when you cold outreach into somebody via telephone who has an iPhone. Most new iPhones, iOS 20, I don't even know numbers, are doing voice because I have an Android, are doing voicemail transcripts. And I didn't know that at first, but it explains some of what I've seen with a behavior I didn't understand. I was leaving somebody voicemail, and the call disconnects mid voicemail message, or in some rare circumstances, people connect to me as I'm leaving voicemail. It leaves me a little confused. But I think what's happening is that they're seeing a live voicemail transcription of what I'm leaving for them, which makes me want to change what I'm saying because I need to capture their attention in the first 10 seconds rather
Mm.
than say, "Hi, Larry, P3 Cost Analyst," on, and then talk about the opportunity. Um, so I'm evolving. I'm going to evolve to that, maybe away from some things, and in 6 months' time there'll be something else because that gets that will I will have to think about adopting or adapting to because of other new technology that is making it more difficult for cold outreach to clients to be effective. So I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
we
an
can
interesting
follow up in
point.
a few days, see how that goes with me.
It's an interesting point you're making about, if there's a new strategy, a lot of people hop in on that strategy and then it ruins it for everyone because it's, people are just getting wise to it and find ways to skip it or opt out of it and whatever. So, um,
I think I
yeah,
have a
it's
slight
interesting.
leg up because I'm comfortable enough with this, and I don't know, I don't see what I don't see. But if I'm comfortable enough with this, will likely be comfortable enough to get a few videos out there, and especially if it gets positive traction, I'll do more of it. Positive traction to me is response and sales. Um, but I imagine many people are not as comfortable with this yet.
Mm. Yeah,
Video.
actually, I think I wrote a post about this the other day about the idea that the those who are creating content for LinkedIn, whatever social channel, that are kind of what I say, like hiding behind text posts, if you will, or hiding behind carousels. And while those are effective, they there's kind of a 1% of the 1% who are actually investing into video content for we mentioned a little bit ago about the fear of being on video. But that fear in your competitors is actually an advantage for you if you can get over that fear, put yourself on video, and actually show up and deliver yourself in a format that your ideal client hasn't seen from your competitors. So now you're standing out. So it's one of those things that, yeah, again, if you can just kind of get through that hurdle of being scared to press record, then there's lots more benefits.
I call it toe dipping. It's like you're not going to get in the pool if you toe dip. Just I got to jump off the deep end, get
Yeah.
wet completely. You mentioned carousel. What's carousel?
Carousels are like if you're on LinkedIn and there's those images that you can click and it's like a slideshow.
Within a post.
Yeah, so it'll show as just one image, but then there'll be a little arrow on the
Okay,
side. If
okay.
you
I
click
didn't
on that
realize that was
arrow,
called carousel.
yeah, that's what we call a carousel. So it's basically just like an image gallery, but in like slideshow format on LinkedIn.
Yeah, they're helpful, but they're only everybody's doing it. I got to do something that everybody's doing, capture somebody's attention, break into it, and start getting more warm referrals. The larger your business, the more warm referrals you can get, in theory, the less of this you have to do.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Larry, this has been awesome. I like to just kind of take one moment at the end of every episode just to kind of highlight stop and pause and say like what if anything is like the number one takeaway that you want our audience to take from today's episode.
Your audience are my peers, essentially. Other people doing outreach.
Yes.
We didn't discuss that. Don't be afraid to try something different. When I first started doing in my role, I was afraid to do cold calls. I would do emails only. Then I got comfortable doing cold calls. Then I got comfortable calling people's cell phone. And then I felt comfortable texting people. Not everybody appreciates it, but I got over the don't call me, got over the hangups pretty quickly. I did my first video 2 years ago. It was the still videos I mentioned on YouTube. There's about five of them. I don't refer them that often, but it helped me get to the point that I feel comfortable with YouTube and articles and talking about myself. I didn't think I'd be comfortable in this conversation right now, Dave, but I am, and I'm gonna do those selfie video outreaches as soon as next week. So get over yourself and just go get out there.
There you go. Love it. Yeah, we'll check back in on how that
Please
strategy.
do.
Yeah. Great. And then if everyone wants to learn more about you, your personal brand, P3, et cetera, where should they go?
I'm looking at my LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile is linkedin.com/in/. Larry M. Levine, Levine. And from there, you can get to my cost analyst page as well.
Great. Larry, this has been awesome. I appreciate your time today. And yeah, we'll check you on the next episode of the Personal Brand
Thank you,
Blueprint.
Dave. I appreciate the invitation. Thanks so
Absolutely.
much.